But Buckland Casey joins me in the studio. Unfortunately, he did lose his seat in Swindon South, but he's back with a vengeance to discuss the Tory leadership and other matters.
Yes.
Let's discuss a really important story just in your capacity as a former Justice Secretary and indeed a lawyer, Sir Robert, and that's the riots in Leeds, in Hare Hills, that we witnessed last week. I mean, I've written a column on it, and of course it's been lampooned by the left on social media because you can't possibly have anyone criticising the state of things. I've said in this column, which was headlined, I don't write the headlines, but it's basically making the point Britain stands on the brink of a terrifying new era of violence, crime and disorder. And I said that not just on the basis of what happened in Hare Hills, but also the intimidation that Jonathan Ashworth faced, this idea that criminals are getting off lightly, you know, questioning of the verdict given, the sentencing given to the Roger Hallam of Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. All of it serves to sort of undermine good, solid law and order in this country. But on the riots, what's your analysis of what happened?
Well, it looks as if an issue relating to the taking of children into care then gets escalated and exploited by people who want to create trouble in that community. That's what it looks like.
People were making the point, Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson were saying, oh, it's got something to do with sort of racial divides. I don't think that's what it was. It was actually just pure thuggery. But it's a terrible thing that people can jump on the bandwagon of an issue that has involved the police and then basically run rings around them. I mean, the police went into retreat. Suddenly a bus is set on fire. I mean, I don't want to be harsh to West Yorkshire Police because those officers are brave people doing a good job. They're inside a car that's being rocked by a mob or whatever. But as soon as the police retreat, then it just allows mob rule to take over, doesn't it?
Well, look, that's the problem that they faced, and it does seem to me that forces across the country need to be as resilient as possible to deal with sudden escalations. This looked like one of those cases where suddenly, without warning, it got out of control. And, you know, for all of us across the country, that is something that we'd all be rightly worried about. I think you're right. I don't think this was something racial. Having read through all the reports, it does seem to have arisen from a particular case. But there's no excuse for this sort of mindless violence. You know, most of us in this country are law-abiding citizens. We play by the rules. And I think we're right to get increasingly fed up when we see people who sometimes get away with it or behave in a way that there doesn't seem to be any redress for. That's something that we've got to, you know, rigorously crack down on.
Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley said this week that he felt that the force was under-resourced. They've got a recruitment crisis, can't attract new people to the police service. As I made the point in my column, you know, in the old days, people grew up wanting to be police officers. Nowadays, kids grow up wanting to film them on their mobile phones and post it on social media. That's a problem. But can't we trace this back to Tory cuts? I know it's awkward, but when Theresa May took a machete to police numbers, we're still feeling the ill effects of that today. That was a terrible mistake by the former Home Secretary, wasn't it?
Look, I remember being there at the time, and I think it's right to note that overall violent crime in our country has fallen, and that's a welcome thing. We don't see the sort of, you know, gang thuggery that we often used to see on our streets after people were drinking 9 pints and going out and causing trouble. That sort of behaviour has definitely declined. However, there are flashpoints, and it does seem to me that, you know, in this modern era, we're facing new threats, that we've got to make sure the police are ready to scale up in response to those incidents.
On that specific point, because I know you're a polite person, you won't want to besmirch your former Conservative colleague, but come on, let's just nail this down. She was wrong to cut police numbers, wasn't she?
Look,
it's come back to haunt us so many times.
I think that it's easy for me to sit here with hindsight and say it was wrong.
All right, well, we can use hindsight, that's fine. We admit that we are being correct after the fact. In hindsight, it was a mistake.
Look, I think there were a couple of things that went wrong. I think we lost numbers in police. We lost numbers of prison officers as well. That was a big problem. And we started to
Chris Grayling's reforms.
And
so we have got two Conservative colleagues here who have shafted the system somewhat. Can we at least find some common ground on that?
I think there was a problem. I think then from the middle of the decade, and certainly when Boris Johnson came in, we started to scale it back up. And now, you know, we are at levels where we were.
Did she make a mistake?
Look, I think it's easy to apply hindsight. I think at the time
All right.
we were
In
trying
hindsight,
to deal.
did she make a mistake?
Look, I think.
Come on, Sir Robert, you went.
No, look, do I think it was a mistake? I could say yes. It was something that perhaps we could have done differently, but let's not forget what we were facing back in 2010.
Yes.
We didn't have many choices in terms of the fact there was no money.
Back then you were complaining about the economic legacy that you'd inherited from Labour. Right now we've got Labour complaining about the economic legacy they've inherited from the Conservatives.
I know, and we know that we've left this country economically in a better place than they did us in 2010. I mean, all the figures that this month and indeed this year showing economic growth, inflation under control.
Really? Rachel Reeves is saying it's the worst economic outlook since the Second World War.
Well, in the words of Mandy Rice-Davies, she would say that, wouldn't she?
Indeed. Right, let's move on then to other matters, including leadership. We've had your former colleagues Steve Baker and Damien Green. I think the latter probably in your caucus of the party, a bit more of a one-nationer. They're supporting Tom Tugendhat. Are you bringing up the rear, supporting Tom Tugendhat as a future leader of this party?
Do you know what? I'm not supporting anybody at the moment.
Oh, come on, Sir Robert, you've got to play ball on this.
Well, I'm just a member now.
I know you
haven't
are.
Vote ultimately in
Should
the last
members
two.
retain a vote,
Of
by
course
the way?
they should, definitely. Now,
What's all this talk about MPs deciding and cutting out the grassroots?
Well, I think that's mad, especially when we've only got 121 of them. You know, I did describe this potential race as bald men arguing over a comb on election night. And, you know, I do want everybody just
bald men arguing over a comb.
Yeah,
All right, fair
I
enough.
think everybody should just calm down.
Yeah.
And remember, actually, playing this long is right. You know, back in 1997, I think William Hague's a great guy, by the way, but, you know, I think that was too early for him.
Yes.
Ian Duncan Smith, you know, with respect to Ian, it didn't work for him.
No.
When we did go long, we elected David Cameron, of course, then became Prime Minister and took us back into power. You know, I think taking it longer, involving the membership in meaningful debate is absolutely the right way to go. You know, we want more members to join the party. We want the conference to be interesting.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
But when you say wait, do you think you should wait until after conference to even have a leadership race? Maybe even have it in the new year?
No, I don't think we should wait till the new year.
No, OK.
I think that we can use the conference as a platform for the various contenders to state their case, as we did in 2005.
Yeah.
And that got a lot of interest. And then have the ballot of members after that, so that we're running it into November time. That seems to be a sensible timetable. And party board have yet to decide all this. I very much hope that they adopt that approach.
What do you make of Suella Braverman arguing that the Conservatives risk becoming centrist cranks? Are you a centrist crank?
Where I am is on the common ground of British politics. I've always been a pragmatic Conservative who wants to lead this country and reflect the best of our nation. That's what Conservatives should be doing, but who also listens to people. You know, we lost votes in this election to Reform, to the Lib Dems,
But
to
why?
Labour.
Because you weren't right-wing enough?
No, because I think people didn't think we were competent enough.
And you didn't honour your 2019 manifesto pledges.
I think a lot of the problems stem from that. I think, you know, certainly in my work, I was honouring those pledges and working even through COVID. And I think that, you know, it would have been good for everybody to have really focused rigorously on what was a very good manifesto in 19 and been able to show that we delivered it, just like Margaret Thatcher always used to talk about delivering her manifestos. Now, if we get back to that competence, people are going to say, yes, we're going to give you time to govern again.
But then do you need a Thatcherite-style leader? I mean, because it's somebody clearly with... Like, you've worked, for instance, with Priti Patel at the Home Office. I think you've also worked quite closely with Robert Jenrick.
Yes.
You worked with Kemi Badenoch when she was in Cabinet at the same time as you.
Yeah.
You know all these people quite well. So who are you thinking could inspire confidence, could unite the party again?
Look, I work with all these people. They're all good colleagues, and you know, I think all of them. Priti, you mentioned, I worked very well with her.
Yes.
You know, a good relationship. We worked extremely well. We're from different traditions as a Conservative Party, but we came together, and I think we made Justice and the Home Office teams much stronger because of that. You mentioned others like Robert and Kemi. You know, they're all people who I recognise as good Conservatives who don't just care about the party, but care about the country.
I know that you haven't mentioned Braverman in that grouping.
Well, look, what I want to see, I think, from colleagues, and that does include Suella as well, is a sense that now is the time, actually, to stop talking
Yes.
and to start listening to why it is
Has
that
she
so
been
many
just
people...
shooting her mouth off too much, Sir Robert? Come on.
My advice is, well, do you remember Harold Lasky, the lefty activist, was told 70 years ago by Clement Attlee that a period of silence would now be appropriate.
Right.
That might be a good thing, not just for Suella, but for all colleagues who seem to think they've got a very quick and glib solution to what is a mother of all problems. You know, I lost to Labour.
Maybe Suella should just defect to Reform.
Oh, look, look, what I'd say to all colleagues is that, you know, you're elected as Conservatives. To be fair, I think it's a statement to say this. You're elected as a Conservative, you serve as a Conservative. And if you have a serious problem and go, then you should have a by-election, you know, in order to test the view of your constituents. But, you know, the reasons why people deserted us were very clear to me on the doorsteps in that 6-week campaign. They just didn't think we were up to the job anymore. Now, that's something that we've got to change. That's going to take a long time. Instead of looking at the personalities, let's look at the values that underpin the Conservative Party.
But who should be leading those conversations? There's another story in the papers today. I think it's the likes of Michelle Donnellan and Lucy Fraser and others, yourself included. I think you're in one of the photographs.
Oh,
you know,
right.
Let former Tories into the conversation. Let people who lost their seats also have the intellectual discussions behind the scenes as to the direction of travel for the Conservatives. I mean, are you currently part of the conversation? Who's leading the conversations? How's it, or is it just all still everyone's taking, just about taking the tin hat off?
I think it's only 2 weeks since this electoral defeat, so let's all just dust ourselves down. I certainly
You're emerging from the rubble of Tory-geddon.
Well, indeed, you know, and I've been a member now. It'll be 40 years next February that I've been a member of the Conservative Party.
Wow.
I'm a lot older than I look, Camilla.
You're so baby-faced.
but, you know, I care about the party. Why do I care about the party? Because I believe the Conservative Party, at its best, reflects the best values of Britain. And, you know, when we serve the nation and put the nation first, we're unbeatable. That's what we lost, and that's what we need to understand.
Do you feel any frustration towards Rishi Sunak, Oliver Dowden and the others that orchestrated what was a disastrous election campaign, let's be honest, went too early, and then there they are, happy in their seats with their shadow ministerial positions, and here you are, Robert Buckland, out no longer serving the good people of Swindon. That must be frustrating, that the people who orchestrated this shower are still in their jobs and you're not.
Of course, I'm frustrated. To be fair to Rishi, he rang me within hours.
Did he? What did he say?
Well, look, we had a proper conversation. I'm not going to reveal the full detail, but
just
he was. Look, the tone was absolutely right. And look, I said.
Did he take responsibility?
Yes, he did. And of course, in his concession
did he say
speech,
sorry?
Yes, he did. And I think that the tone, the approach that he's taken is absolutely the right one.
Do you think he phoned everybody?
I don't know. I'm sure he's phoned. I know he's phoned a lot of people, and I think, you know, he's doing what is absolutely right. And you know, I pay absolute tribute to him for doing that. Yes, the timing was wrong. You know, in my view, we should have gone later. I think we should have gone in the autumn. You know, all the advice had been to go long, hold your nerve, and see the economy pick up.
Green shoots.
However, I would say this. I don't think we can just say, oh, it's the timing that caused it, and it's one person or Oliver or whatever.
Although D-Day didn't help.
That didn't help. There are a myriad of things. The seeds of this disaster were sown a long time ago, and, you know, that's something we've all got to now own up to and acknowledge and learn from.